We move on to tourism. I want to invite up stage Ola Wright, President, Founder, CEO of West Africa Tourism Organization. Please let's give it up to her. And then Annabelle Mckenzie. Yes. Yeah. She's the Director of International Affairs at the Ghana Tourism Authority. So there's a third person who is going to join us by Zoom. He's on there. I'm going to introduce him very soon. So Ola, just move here so we can see him. But before we get into it, this is an interesting one. I'm going to be the moderator. I love tourism. I will invite upstage a Deputy CEO for the Ghana Tourism Authority in charge of finance and admin to give us a short remarks on the subject of tourism so far as the Africa diaspora is concerned and Africa UK Week. Mr. Ben Ananinsia. Please let's give it up to him.
Good morning, everyone. Or is it afternoon now? Okay, good afternoon. My watch is, an hour behind time. This morning has been very, very enriching. From what we heard from Ambassador Moderator and the Cocoa Man, we are all aware, or at least we can come to appreciate that there are great opportunities for us as Africans if we close the information gap and exploit all the advantages that have been laid out within the context of the Continental Free Trade Area and all of that. And one of the key levers that would make this possible is tourism, in regional tourism flows. For a country like Ghana, if we look at our 10 source countries, the generating markets, you have United States, Nigeria, Britain, and so on. Out of those 10 leading destinations that come to Ghana, you only find 2 of them being African, Nigeria being number 2, and maybe Cote d'Ivoire, which is unlike most other destinations we find. If you went to Germany and checked who comes to Germany as tourists, you find that most of the regional neighbors tend to be the people who travel the most to destinations. That's not the case in most African countries. Most of the people we are looking at are coming from elsewhere. And that's a gap that we have to be able to deal with, to boost our numbers, to spread the advantages of the business and all of that. Now, by virtue of, I don't know if they call it a virtue, the fact of colonialism and our connection to the metropolitan countries, a lot of Africans find themselves either in Paris or in Belgium or in London, either as they come to school or trade or whatever. And then we tend to have a second or third generation of British who are of Ghanaian origin, Senegalese who are of French who are of Senegalese origin. And that diaspora then becomes a good captive market, that all tourism authorities or the nations should be able to exploit because there's a natural connection to the destination. And they are a very powerful inbound group that we have to focus on. We have tried it in Ghana by virtue of the relics of the transatlantic slave trade that we have in our countries. We are a kind of a natural place to go to for those who find themselves on the other side of the Atlantic. When they come home or when they come to Ghana, there are things that really remind them that this fact of history happened. But again, because of the large numbers of our people who live in the US and in other places, the second, third generation also then are encouraged to come home. And we've tried it in Ghana, and we find that the diaspora market can be a very useful a very strategic group of people that we must all engage with, because they come with their knowledge, their skills, their insights, their investment acumen, and ultimately the destination benefits from that engagement. If you've heard of December in GH, we've tried to make Accra and Ghana the most exciting place on the probably on the continent in December. And we deliberately curate activities, events, programs to make the place interesting. So that, like somebody was asking over there, if you live here, there's no reason why you should just go to Mallorca or go to Spain in December. Go home, first to Ghana or from any other part of the continent. And it can be a useful, enriching, and engaging experience with our diaspora. So that's the experience we've had in Ghana that we'd like to share with other people. And as we engage further, all the obstacles that you may face, either with visas or the challenges and so on, then the state's machinery is brought to bear to eliminate them, to make your visits and your tours and your even more seamless and less stressful. So on that note, thank you very much again for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. So let me also introduce Mr. Maurice Kusotera, who is a project management expert, but also Director of Diaspora at the Pan-African Tourism Board. Maurice, can you hear me? Paul?
Yes, sure. Yes.
Yeah. All right, so we are all set to go. Ola Wright from West Africa Tourism Organization, Annabelle Mckenzie, Director of International Affairs, Ghana Tourism Authority, and Maurice Kusotera.
Recording in progress.
From the Pan-African Tourism Board. And our subject today is really how we leverage I just want to be sure that positioning Africa's urban, cultural, and heritage tourism on the global stage. And so here we are in the UK. How do we utilize or build on or leverage our cultural, our intangibles, and bring it to the global stage? Ola, you've been at it for quite some time now. Can you tell us what you do and also what you make of this subject?
Okay, good afternoon all. Good to see you here, so thanks for coming. My name is Ola Wright. I'm the President CEO for the West Africa Tourism Organization, which basically is a regional tourist board, for West Africa. We deal with developing tourism and promoting tourism within and to the region of West Africa. Just to give you a quick, background, the organization was, from out of a cry, for information. I've been, can you, okay,
yeah.
It's better now, yeah. So I've been a tour operator, for several decades, in the UK. And from there, I'm also a descendant of an enslaved man that was taken, and my origin is Nigerian, by the way. So if you hear some Nigerian, whatever, spitting out, you can understand, pardon me. So I've always had a passion, for reconnecting people of African descent in the diaspora with, Nigeria. Because I always think I have relatives in the Caribbean. I have relatives in the US, etc. So I decided to start a project called Freedom Pilgrims, reconnecting people of African descent in the diaspora with the motherland. And I thought it would be so easy being a Nigerian and a West African. And obviously the countries were Nigeria, Ghana, and Benin, Togo, that, coast. And it was the most difficult thing I'd ever experienced. Then I realized that a lot of people wanted to get into that, but couldn't get information, etc. So that was how the organization was formed. We will get into that probably later in terms of some challenges and what we need to do as well to actually bring things together.
All right, so Annabelle, you obviously, your background, Tell us a bit about it and how you're playing out bringing Africa back to the global stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Annabelle Mckenzie. I'm with Ghana Tourism Authority. I moved from America to Ghana around 8 years ago. I'm currently the Director of International Affairs, but prior I was the Director of the Year of Return and Beyond the Return initiatives for the authority. And I simply say that I've lived the American dream, but I moved to Africa to live the African dream. And so that's what got me to Africa. And I want to bridge the gap between Africa and other nations, but I also want us to own our narrative and tell our stories the way that they should be told and not by other people.
Yeah, but then looking at what is happening globally now, take the US as an example, and I mean, I don't want to be specific to every country, but what is going on around the world with every country trying to be more inward looking, how do we as Africans break out?
So if you look at what's going on in the U.S. With the current political climate and different things that are happening, a lot of the diaspora, they have an interest in reconnecting with Africa, but they may not know how to necessarily do that. So there's an opportunity for us to merge our cultures. And there's also an information gap. If you look at when I grew up in America, I grew up in a home where my father always told us Africa was home, even though he had never traveled to Africa. But if I went off of TV and the different images, every night when you're up, there was a commercial, Feed the Children, with the little boy and the flies flying around his head. So the information that a lot of Americans have about Africa isn't how it really is. And so we have to take the opportunity to represent Africa the way that we want to represent it. And also, Africa is not a continent that is in need. We have everything that we need. We just need to produce our own products. We need to let people know our investment opportunities. When it comes to Africa, I never tell a sad story. I always tell the greatness of Africa. And it's not just the historical diaspora, it's also continental Africans that were born abroad. They also need to reconnect with the motherland. I know COVID, one thing was Ghana closed down, and the only way you can get back in the country is if you had your Ghanaian passport. And in my role, a lot of Ghanaians, and particularly in the UK, were calling me crying, saying, we're trying to come back, but we don't have a passport. And so I said, you don't have your own country's passport? You also have to be proud of where you're from. Or we'll be a family where the wife had a passport, but the kids didn't have a passport. And so as Ghanaians and continental Africans, it's also important for them to tell the story of Africa and be proud of the country that you came from, even if you were born abroad.
Thank you very much. Maurice, your take on the subject matter.
Thank you so much. My gratitude and greetings to the chair and organizers and all protocols observed. My name is Maurice Kusotera, and I was born and raised in Southern Africa, in Zimbabwe in particular. And straight from university, I joined in ALI, where I was a planning analyst for Air Zimbabwe. And I worked there for a few years, 3 years to be specific, then relocated to the UK 27 years ago. And I've been in the health sector, but still I have my foot in the tourism industry. And I am an executive director of African Tourism Showcase, which started during COVID, whereby we were getting all the tourism and travel stakeholders all over Africa to participate on our sessions where we were promoting Africa. And I'm also a director of Eye Health Africa, whereby we take nurses and doctors to Africa, especially in Uganda, and also now partly in Ghana, where we do cataract removals in partnership with Moorfields Eye Hospital. And we also get equipment sent to Africa through our organization. I'm also the international representative of Molex Foundation in Ghana, Cape Coast, where I am a full participant of the Pan-African Village, which is in Ghana, Cape Coast, and therefore I am a proud diaspora who is also participating in the in the community projects within Cape Coast itself, and therefore I was appointed recently as the director of the diaspora office or diaspora desk by the new Pan Africa Tourism Board, which is incorporating all of the 54 countries to focus on tourism from the grassroots levels right up to innovation, to culture, heritage, and promoting free movement, migration, and skills exchange for all over Africa, including the diaspora. And I would also want to add that I live only 5 minutes from a very
He has his chocolate.
famous chocolate factory, but yeah, that I eat Ghana chocolate.
Okay, you live and eat Ghana
Thank you.
chocolate. Thank you very much, Maurice. Ola, I think earlier on the panel, Ambassador Bejetu mentioned the free movement of people and how tourism can be a catalyst for trade. You've been trying to integrate West Africa with your work. How difficult has that been, and how do you think we can really remove the barriers?
Do me a favor, everyone, please. Can you please just literally laugh out loud? Please. Just laugh out loud. Roll. Laugh out loud. That's exactly is what it is. Akwasi and I happen to work on a project called WAIT. It's still going, and we're actually, really reviving it now. And WAIT, stands for West Africa Integrated Travel. Look, I've been in tourism for some decades. I am a specialist. I am a tourism expert. So understand that, first of all. I am an expert on Caribbean tourism, on Israel tourism, on which other ones do I specialize? And obviously African, tourism, and also I work specifically in promoting, Syria, believe it or not, for the tourism. So I know what I'm talking about when I'm talking tourism. Akwasi and I, realize that we have what it takes within ourselves. Look, we don't need to travel to the UK or to the US or anywhere. They don't want you anyhow. I relocated from the UK, after, I'm not going to say how many decades. Now, if we have everything that we need within Africa, I'm focusing on West Africa because it's just easier to try and take, a bunch of a bite, at once. And we need to be able to move. Ambassador mentioned free movement, and I chuckled when I sat there. And Akwasi and Ben are witnesses, because there is free movement in West Africa. It's on paper. It's passed through the laws, and everything. But is there really free movement? You get to the, Aflao border. In fact, I get a call almost every week, because someone is in Aflao, someone is in, Badagry. Where was that border by Badagry? No, Badagry. Seme border and all that, and they go through hell, because someone is saying to you that your passport is virgin, you have not traveled on that particular route, so you need to disvirgin it, and you need to pay some money.
Disvirgin. This is the first time I'm hearing this word.
Oh yeah, and I still experience it. And Akwasi and I took, and I'm not sure if Ben was there, but anyhow, we decided to travel by road, because if we're preaching something, we need to live what we preach as well. I think by the time I got to Accra, we departed from Nigeria. Yeah. In fact, actually, I slept, and I slept and just let the guys to be driving. I think I needed a rest for like 2 weeks after that travel. Now, my brother from the Cocoa Board mentioned, and I think probably Nana mentioned it as well, that a lot of us depend on government. I think I'm done with depending on government. There's a lot that we as individuals need to do. The private sector, look, tourism is a private sector driven industry. However, we do need government to put structure in place. We need government to make it easy for private sector to build on. However, it is very challenging, even within the corridors of Nigeria, Benin, Togo, and Ghana. It's crazy. A young lady traveled actually only because we promote this. COVID happened, and to some extent, I was happy because what we were preaching and what we were advocating for a long time finally, came to realization, because you don't need to travel abroad. Let us travel. So, domestic and regional tourism then grew. It shot up. And that really gladdens my heart. COVID did not gladden my heart because my industry was shut down. In fact, my businesses were shut down for 3 years because a lot of the borders around the world were still shut down, for 3 years. So nothing really happened. However, what does it take? People like to blame government. And I ask a question. Who makes up government? It's individuals. So I'm also challenging each and every one of you in this room, because some of you will get to government. You're telling a story now. You're speaking a certain way. But when you get in that position, what will you do? What will you do? And I've seen it happen, ever so often. Because people will preach, something. When they get to the position of authority, the language changes. We need to take responsibility. I think, it was Fawood who said, be responsible, take responsibility. So the buck stops with you. Look, there are lots of challenges. I can tell you from today, till Jesus comes about the challenges. However, I also see a lot of opportunities. I also see where we come in, how we can change the narrative. Trust me, the narratives of African tourism, especially West African tourism, has drastically changed. Everywhere I go now, people want to travel to West Africa. I just got back from the Caribbean. We started working with the Caribbean, since 2005, 2006. We specifically started working with Barbados, and I'm building onto something, with this. Since 2006. Why? Someone mentioned this earlier. Barbados is the closest, to West Africa. But to get there, you have to either go via Europe or go via the United States. 24 hours, 36 hours, thereabout. However, if there was direct, link, it wouldn't take more than 6 hours, thereabout. But Barbados was also ready, because they had a commission for Pan-African Affairs, governments of Barbados in those days. The commission is no more, but they're still championing, the Pan-African, story. And these were people that were longing, yearning to be reconnected. That particular agency was actually led by the late Michael Safari, mixed race guy, but who then decided to take on the Pan-Africanism. So he was, in fact, they called him White Man Rasta, because yes, he's mixed race, but he was very, fair, very pale, but he had Rasta. And he changed his name from Michael to Michael. And I don't know what his surname was, but then to Safari, owning the African story. But how many of us, as Africans, and as African in the diaspora, how many of us, take it upon ourselves to actually tell the story? As my sister here rightly said, we need to tell our story our way, and we need to tell our story the true way. I know a lot of the story because I have a direct lineage. My great-great-grandfather was taken a slave. He was one of the very fortunate ones that was able to trace his root back. I think he actually bought his freedom. Then, there about that time. I'm going to wrap up now, Akwasi, quickly. Yeah. There about that time, I think the treaty for the freedom, whatever, was already passed, but he would not stay in the diaspora. He traced his route back. But we have a lot of stories to tell, and I'm going to then talk about how people see us, because we also need to even stick to the topic. When you talk about African tourism, people just think safari, and yes, it's a great asset. We have that, and we're proud of that. We're proud of our safaris and wildlife, but it is only a sector, just a little part of what we have or what our story is. So we need to tell a wholesome story of African tourism.
Thank you very much. We need to tell a whole different story. Annabelle, from where you sit, you've been at both sides of the aisle, if I should put it that way. Diaspora coming back. How do we utilize the intangibles that we have, our heritage, our culture, to really attract and even promote intra-Africa? Which other African countries have you traveled to?
Kenya. I used to work in Nigeria.
So you've done Nigeria,
Kenya, South
Kenya,
Africa,
South
Tanzania.
Africa,
I've been
Tanzania.
to several African countries.
What has been the experience, and how do you think we can build on from there?
So the countries I've traveled to, I think I've had a good experience. Anyone that knows my story, I was actually supposed to move to Tanzania, not Ghana, but it changed to Ghana. And I think one of the biggest things is, when we go to African countries, it's very welcoming, and it feels like we are back at home. If you look at Ghana in particular, there's our heritage and our culture, and a lot of diaspora that come back, especially African Americans and Caribbeans, it's to reconnect to our roots. Everyone goes to Cape Coast and they experience the tragedy that happened in that area. But Ghana, what I always say, is more than slavery, it's more than colonization. So it's also important to show different parts and tell other stories. And so at Ghana Tourism Authority, we encourage people to travel to all regions in Ghana. I know when I moved there, there's a particular tribe, I won't mention who, but everyone thinks that may be the only tribe and the only local language that's spoken in Ghana, but there's multiple languages. And so we try to promote that. And even when I moved to Ghana and I learned about the different tribes and the different cultures, when I, traveled to a particular region, the first thing they asked me, do I speak a particular language? And I'm like, no, I just moved here. Well, you have to know, here is a dictionary so you can learn. So Ghana has a lot to offer. But if we speak on the cultural side, if you look at the world right now, Afrobeats is very big around the world. And I think it's a great thing. But what I see happening is that people now think that is the only type of music that is in Africa. If you look at Ghana, there's high life music and other genres that have come from the continent. We have to be careful to make sure that we're promoting Africa the way that we want to. Because what's happening in music now, internationally, is America, the UK, and other countries have now told us Afrobeats is the only music that's coming out of the continent. But if you live there, there's multiple types of music that comes there. And so when it comes to culture and traditions, I think it's important for each country to make sure we market the entire cultural and traditions that we have and not let the West lead the story. The African diaspora, especially historical diaspora, we love history, we love food, we love connecting, but I do think there's a gap in how we are telling that story coming from Africa. We kind of let the West run with it after we introduce something into that particular market.
Okay, then my last question to you. So you were involved in the Year of Return. Nigeria has launched, is it IPADA? Other countries are also doing different initiatives, all targeting the diaspora. Is there a case for Africa coming together and working on one big return project instead of different, like we always do? We have the AFCFT, but everybody's doing their own thing. How can we work together to bring the diaspora back to Africa? Not necessarily to Ghana, but to Africa.
I actually feel like Africa is working together. So if you look at the year of return and beyond the return, while I was in that position, over 15 or 16 countries in Africa sent delegations to Ghana to meet with us to understand how we did year of return and beyond the return. And Ghana, we didn't hide the information. We freely shared to say, this is the blueprint, this is how we did it, and we encouraged other African countries to release something similar. A delegation from Nigeria actually came over, and so we knew these different things were going to happen. I think it's important for each country to launch a return initiative in their own way, because Africa is a continent made of multiple countries. It's not just one country. So how each country is going to market their culture, their investment opportunities, it's going to be different. And one thing that I tell the diaspora, while I love Ghana, you can go anywhere in Africa and live a good life. East Africa might speak to your heart more than West Africa. Southern Africa might speak to your heart. I was just recently in South Africa, and I was like, okay, it's been 10 years since I traveled here, but I can see why the diaspora will want to go to South Africa. Tanzania, I absolutely love Tanzania. I can see why the diaspora wants to go there. So I encourage people, visit multiple locations and find out what works well for you, your family, your children, and your heart, and it will all be good.
It will all be good. Before you come in, let me go to Maurice quickly. Maurice, what is the Pan-African Tourism Board doing in this space?
The Pan-African Tourism Board is working towards the togetherness, partnerships and collaborations within Africa itself. We are also looking into areas where we are promoting free movement and whereby, as discussed by a number of panelists, there are challenges. But working with the Pan-African Parliament, which we have begun to collaborate and to talk and discuss with, we have opportunities. There is hope. And as we know that Africa is made up of a very, very complex colonial past, tourism was always linked to the colonial past. And therefore, there were challenges whereby you find some countries, speak different languages from the other countries. And we are 54 countries. And therefore, bringing all the 54 countries can be a challenge. But there is hope. With the African Union, we are working towards standardizing the free movement, for example. We are looking into the aviation sector, where we are hoping that there may be the open skies, the Yamoussoukro Declaration, whereby we need to look at how we can benefit as Africa through the open skies situation. And we're looking at the issue of diaspora, which is my desk, as discussed by other panelists. We are encouraging the diasporans to look back to Africa. We got children born out of Africa, whereby we may have parents, the father from another country and the mother from another country. But we are looking at how can these children be integrated in Europe and in Africa, and how can they have free movement from their fatherland and their motherland. And therefore, for me, as an individual who was born in Southern Africa, living in the UK, but looking at retiring in Ghana, in the Pan-African village in Cape Coast, like some of my colleagues, we are looking at skills exchange. What can we do, taking the skills that the diaspora have to go to those countries of where we are going to invest all our hard-earned, pensions, and look at developing the schools, the hospitals, the roads, all the infra integrated Africa. And therefore, when we talk about land and assets and ownership, we do see that there are a number of different countries that have got different frameworks. So the framework of Zimbabwe, for example, for land ownership is different from South Africa, it's different from Ghana, it's different from Uganda, where I go quite often with our eye health project. And therefore, we have to look at how can we share good practices with the governments so that they will attract investment with land ownership and assets as key to attract people from the US, from the Caribbean, and from all over Europe, so that they can really say, we got homes, not only homes, but holiday homes, but retiring in Africa. And that is key for the development of Africa. We
Thank
need
you.
to ensure that identity issues are addressed. Because we have heard one of the speakers talk about xenophobia in other countries. How can we integrate and be seen that it's no longer one identity? We are now a global citizen where we have multiple identities, and we can work in different countries, bring the skills to different places. And one day you are in Zambia training, you are also maybe in Morocco learning about something. Take those skills and build multinational, negotiated deals that can be taken on the ground.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you
we
very
have
much.
spoken about COVID.
Morris,
we have
let me-
spoken
let
about
me-
COVID, and we've seen that.
You hold it there. Let me get to the floor so that we can take some questions from the floor. Yes, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I have two questions for the panel. The first one, I think, Annabelle, this might be more for you. I know you said the year of return, beyond the return, we're now in the Black Star experience. I was wondering if you could just share a bit more about what all of that entails, because I don't think, unless it was discussed yesterday, I don't think it has come up to at least today so far, so it'd just be good for us to know a bit more about that. And then the second question, I think, is for everyone. When we talk about diaspora and tourism, as you all have rightly mentioned, there are different types of diaspora within diaspora. You have the historic diaspora, you have immigrants themselves, and you have people like myself who are children of African or Ghanaian immigrants. How do you cater to all the different types of diaspora? Because I think we can have different things that we're looking for when we return home. Thank you.
All right. So Annabelle, you go first.
Okay, so the Black Star Experience is the overall tourism initiative that has been launched by the government of Ghana. I get this question a lot: what is the difference between Year of Return, Beyond the Return, and the Black Star Experience? So Year of Return and Beyond the Return focused on the diaspora. It was a campaign that was launched by the former president and Ghana Tourism Authority. Now, with the Black Star Experience, it's not just for the diaspora, it's the overall tourism campaign. But the focus, though, also is on culture, entertainment, and heritage. Ghana is not just for the diaspora. Ghana is for everyone to come and visit. We have sports tourism, we have adventure tourism. A lot of people actually come to Ghana to participate in surfing. In the Western region. A lot of people wouldn't know that. On the adventure tourism side, we have a lot of groups that come in that like to do hiking, they like to go through the country and do backpacking. And so that is the major difference. Each government will always have their own tourism initiative, and so we are promoting the Black Star Experience heavily. Beyond the Return and Year of Return are still initiatives that focus on the diaspora. We work closely with Diaspora Affairs Office of the President. We also work with the Black Star Experience Secretariat. We'll actually be launching December in GH in the coming weeks, so there will still be the calendar of events. In terms of your questions about the different type of diaspora, that is a wonderful thing. So with Ghana Tourism Authority, we break the diaspora up into different target markets. So the historical diaspora are, you can say, the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. The Ghanaian diaspora, the continental diaspora, are Ghanaians that are living abroad, they were born abroad, or they moved abroad. And so we target them differently because they have different needs. So normally, Ghanaians that live abroad, they may have contacted us about passport issues. When they come to Ghana, how can they start a tourism business? Whereas the historical diaspora, it's more around how can I get citizenship? I need a residence permit and a work permit. How do I partner with another Ghanaian for a tourism business? And learning also more about the country. And so we work closely with the missions here in the UK, also in the US, and other sites to make sure all the diaspora gets their needs addressed.
All right, thank you. Ola, your take on the question?
Yeah, so now, first of all, I just wanted to kind of like just also mention that now, I mean, Annabelle mentioned that, Afrobeat, is going, and that, that's not just, I mean, obviously we have lots of different, music and all, but also, Afrobeat is actually a fusion of a lot of different types of, music. So you have the highlights in there, you have the, I mean, all the different, whatever, samba is not, well, samba is African to some part because you actually have that, and I think we need to, because if we have a lot of attractions in terms of tourism and what we can use, the tools that we can use to promote tourism, to Africa or to West Africa. Now, if Afrobeat is working, for the diaspora, we can use that as a tool. A lot of people will, come to you and say, I've listened to Afrobeat, I love this. I'm going to use an example of, when the Lionesses won the trophy in the UK. It was a proud moment. At that time also, I think Nigeria also won the Nigerian women as well. So it was actually a women, affair. The, African, no, actually, was it the men? And whatever, some, they won. But the Lionesses, now, it gladdens my heart when I saw, a surprise that was done for the captain,
yeah,
for the
with
captain,
the music,
and that her favorite music, or musician was Burna Boy, and then they flew Burna Boy in, and Burna Boy, stood there on the global stage singing Afrobeats, and I'm seeing all this, white women, whatever, dancing and singing along. I did not know any lyrics to that song, but they were singing it. So for me, that is a tool right there. So I'm going to take that tool and I'm going to propagate it. Now, the diaspora is the greatest asset that we have, really, really, for tourism. The locals and the diasporans. And for me, if you're asking who are the diasporans, if you're black, you're African diaspora. If you're 0.05 whatever black, you're African diaspora because you have an African blood in you. So we can use that. Now, Annabelle also mentioned earlier that people say the story that is propagated is poverty-stricken children with flies flying around the head and all, and that is what people see. Agyeman Bank went to actually had their
yearly, yeah,
Agyeman in the Bahamas. One of the guys said to me and said, "Oh, that they got there, and when they heard, and these are African diaspora, and when they saw the Africans coming in, then one in particular, in fact COO for the Caribbean, for the diaspora, that when they went to a restaurant, they wanted to go somewhere and was like, oh no, it's very expensive in there. That's very expensive. Or they'll probably want to take a dish or whatever, and they say, oh, that's very expensive. So thinking that the Africans, they cannot afford it. And I laughed. And in fact, I said to one of them, I said, one African will buy your entire country. And I'm not joking. We have enough money. So why do people perceive Africa as that? Is what the media, shows. So how do we change that narrative? So again, it is back to us. We all have, non-African friends. I have friends, colleagues and whatever, that we take to Africa, and I say, oh, I have a Ghanaian friend, and when I told them I was going to Ghana, they were like, oh, are you crazy? What are you going to do there? I have a, friend from whatever. So if we are demarketing ourselves, then we have a big problem.
We have a big problem. Thank you, Ola. So, Morris, over to you, your take, and then we'll wrap up this panel. We have 2 panels to end the day, so we want to move the conversations quickly. Morris.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much. And as my colleagues have mentioned about our, the differences in the diaspora market, it also means that sometimes, or usually, there will be common interests that we can harness from each other to make sure that the tourism sector, and our countries move towards viability. And one of the things that we are looking at within the Pan-African Tourism Board is we are looking at those Africans, sports people in Africa or here in Europe or across the world who have made great strides of excellence and taking those to Africa. As one of the panelists said, Africans and diasporans, there are some very affluent diasporans whereby they can even invest in various projects, various industries, and create value addition industries for our families and our villages back in Africa. We are looking at creation of assets and creation of wealth, asset management, even knowledge, because that is our legacy. And we need to come together, both the Africans in Africa and Africans abroad, to make sure that we build a great legacy for our countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My last question to you, Annabelle, and then we'll wrap this up. What are some of the emerging tourism areas that you see? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Okay, I think that's a good question. In Ghana, cruise tourism is very big in
Which
Ghana
one?
now.
Cruise?
Cruise tourism. So we have a lot
So
of...
who's planning a cruise here? Let me see. Okay. We're going to Ghana.
Yeah, a lot of major cruise lines are now docking in Ghana. We work with some of the big tour companies like Land Tours and Sunseekers, and they normally manage those groups that come in. We have a lot of investors that have an interest in opening up amusement parks. So similar to Six Flags, there's a lot of research going on there now, and water parks. And so moving from only marketing sites and destinations and creating actual experiences. And so that's what we're seeing a lot of in Ghana right now.
All right, thank you. I go to the floor for the last question. I believe Asis, yeah. Please just do a quick introduction of yourself so we know who you are.
Yeah, I was hoping you didn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm David Roberts. I'm the founder and chairman of the African Caribbean Sustainability and Investment Summit. This is taking place on the 21st and 22nd of November. I just wanted to respond to Ola, is it?
Yes, Ola.
Yeah, your comment about the Afrexim Bank's active 2024, I think it was, in Bahamas.
Yes.
Right. Well, there's a very interesting point about that because obviously I am from the Caribbean and my entity, we are working on bringing Africans and Caribbeans together to work sustainably. And one of the reasons why you find Caribbeans being a little reluctant or resistant to Africans coming to the region is because of an old perception where Africans have come, and I've met a few of them in my years of journalism in the Caribbean. They came over as immigrants looking for work, economic immigrants in most cases. So they have that perception that, so they haven't been kept abreast with the fact that Africa has emerged and is emerging as a serious continent. So one of the challenges that we have is trying to change that perception ourselves. So what we're doing now is we're working with the Grenada government because the Prime Minister of Grenada, Mr. Mitchell, he acknowledged what we're doing because we are now sponsored by Afrexim Bank, and we're working really hard to change that perception. So what I'd like to know now in terms of the question is how do marketing agencies across Africa address this challenge? Because it's a real challenge and it's something that we need to work on.
Yeah, Ola, take that one and then we'll wrap this up. I want to move to the next panel quickly.
Okay, yes. So now, I'm going to say this, and that will probably also stand, probably as my, closing remark or whatever, that we need to move from a narrative of deficit and to a narrative of pride. A lot of people, and now, I say this, and I always get people say, oh, it's easy for you to say, you're this, you're that, you have this, you're... But we need to move from the narrative of deficit to pride. We have people from the other side that think this is how Africa is. We also have Africans thinking that, oh, the grass is greener on the other side, and we must leave Africa, and really you actually have a lot more going, for you in your home country. So you get to the other place, and you actually went with a different narrative, then you start behaving badly also. So they see this, and that is all they can see with Africa. But I think, I love what you're doing, and I think we need to, connect. So I think, when we have, projects like what you're doing, having things, done together, working together, I think we need to all work together as Africans and with the diaspora. When I say Africans, I actually don't separate the diaspora because we're the same. So we need to have projects and events so that, then exchange programs where, in fact, there's actually some going on, and I'll talk to you about that as well. So having exchange programs, so the Caribbeans will come to Africa and say, Africans don't live on,
Right.
tree houses.
Thank
We've
you.
moved on. And then the, Africans will see the Caribbeans as our siblings, basically.
Thank you. And then a quick one, and then we wrap up here. Just an intervention, and then we bring this. This panel has really gone
I'll
on,
make it
but I
very
think
short.
we need a day for this one. Yeah.
I'll make it very short. Thank you for allowing me to just say a few words. And pertaining to the discussion that you've had and the question that was just spoken about, I have recently, I'm Jamaican born, by the way. May I introduce myself? I'm Dr. now, Ajua Katili, Queen Mother the First. I've been going to Ghana for 32 years. And I do take 32 years. And I do take people to Ghana as friends, but not on a tour as such, because I'm busy doing a lot of projects and stuff, but I go and enjoy themselves. This year, I decided in May and June this year, for 5 weeks, I was in Jamaica, and I've started in my own community, in my local primary and infant schools, introducing Ghana to those children. And the questions they were asking me were still very sad. Do I see the monkeys on the street? How about the elephants? So I have to be teaching them where the elephants are and where the monkeys are, and so on and so forth. And once they got over that, they were saying, I'm going to do good in school. I'm going to live in Africa, because I'm spreading a positive message about Africa, about West Africa, Kenya, all African countries.
Thank you.
And as Bob
Thank you.
Marley says,
thanks for
once
that.
you're black, you're an African.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think we can start in our schools. Education is the key as well. We're not just going to be talking about the older folks or the teenagers or the people who want to go back to Ghana, but we have to start at the grassroots with the children and do the education, and I think it can go further.
Thank you very much. So on that note, on that beautiful note, we bring this panel to a close. Let's give it up to Maurice, Annabelle, and Ola. Oh, you can do better. Yes, and now you get your photo session.